By this point, I'm sure most of us have seen, or at least heard, about the recent Jubilee video with Mehdi Hasan. When it comes to Jubilee, most of their stuff is a pretty tough watch, as they seem to have steered pretty clearly into rage bait engagement content. This one in particular was pretty rough though, given that it featured individuals who openly sympathized with fascist and ethno-nationalist ideologies. If you're thinking, Nadia, isn't the whole point of Jubilee that they market themselves as pushing for empathy and dialogue? How could they give a platform to those ideologies to their millions of subscribers? And that's a pretty good first step for this critical analysis, and you're preaching to the choir here. I'm thinking that the answer to your question is that Jubilee's preoccupation with creating dialogue and kindness is largely just misdirection that ends up engendering more harm than if they just done nothing at all. That, and they're probably just doing it for a money grab, which is not the most surprising idea. Jubilee Media, through their marketing, positions themselves as a digital media company that pushes boundaries, tackles taboos, and breaks the rules. We believe discomfort and conflict are pivotal forces. Their YouTube channel, Jubilee, has the objective of provoking understanding and creating human connection. This may come as a surprise to hear, given that some of their most viral content centers around massive arguments and misunderstandings that occur as a result of the production design. Generally, their most viral video design centers around bringing two opposing groups of people together for a conversation. This all takes different forms, but usually looks something like this. Group A and Group B have seemingly insurmountable ideological differences. Jubilee will take this and then turn it into videos like this. One Group A member versus 20 Group B members, or Group A versus Group B, and then remix over and over again. They have a couple of running themes on their channel for different types of videos. One of them is middle ground, where people try to find agreement despite their differences. Surrounded, which is the type of video we saw with Mehdi Hasan. Spectrum, which attempts to showcase that ideas come on, well, a spectrum of belief. Not exactly the most creative design, and I'm assuming it's supposed to create some sort of structure that implies nuance or empathy. Except for Surrounded, that one seems to be pretty on the nose for just being straight verbal combat. Regardless, most of the most prominent content ends up being the stuff that stunlocks the internet because of how outlandish and outrageous some of the conversations and individuals end up being. It does seem that most of the time, there is some sort of understanding amongst the participants that friction between the ideology creates a tension, so you'll notice that many of the participants seem to go in with a mindset of arguing rather than actually trying to find middle ground or whatever the fuck Jubilee says they're trying to do. This aim of arguing or gaining virality often means some pretty harmful and dangerous ideas are proliferated. Taylor Lorenz posted an interview she did with the CEO of Jubilee Media, Jason Y. Lee, that she did at the beginning of 2025. I highly recommend watching the full thing, it's pretty good. In this interview, Jason Y. Lee makes the following statements.
So I had this kind of, again, crazy idea at the time where, like, could we create a media company that is not about featuring just the left side or just the right side, but featuring true human voices?
In another interview a while ago, you said you wanted to create the Disney of empathy. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that's played out? For people that aren't familiar with your work, what happened after 2016, and what did you start to make your, name known for online?
Yeah, we said that we wanted to be the Disney of empathy, and what we meant by that was we wanted to be the brand or the hub for all things empathy. And our mission at Jubilee is to provoke understanding and create human connections.
Unsurprisingly, despite the efforts of Taylor Lorenz asking some very pointed questions, Jason Y. Lee ends up running in circles with his answers, usually bringing everything back to the idea of empathy and dialogue and representation as a main focus of their production at Jubilee. Let's contrast these statements with some of the ideas heard on these Jubilee videos.
And same with xenophobic what's the problem with xenophobic nationalism? Don't you think that's better for Americans in general?
Xenophobic nationalism is better.
We should have a coherent culture. Everyone should be a part of the same culture. We should have assimilation. I mean, that is what America is. It's rooted in European identity and Christian values. That's what it has been. Would you really disagree with that? What is it then, if that's not the identity of America?
Ay, Dios mío. So obviously there's a pretty big gap between the content Jubilee puts out and what their marketing and CEO says that they're trying to put out. In their video with Mehdi Hasan that posted earlier this month, we saw this contradiction display itself pretty blatantly. Here are some more quotes from that debate. Quick heads up, I'm going to edit these clips pretty heavily because I don't want the faces of these individuals anywhere on my channel and they don't deserve any extra promotion.
how would Connor's America look? What would it look like?
Well, quite frankly, I think we would deport people who shouldn't be here.
No, I didn't ask about deporting. What does the government look like?
What does the government look like?
Yeah.
I would say, quite frankly, it's under a sort of benevolent leader such as
Where does he
Franco.
come from? Everyone,
Carl
even their own
Schmitt makes
supporters.
this point very well in his work. It's the friend-enemy distinction, right? You
Carl
liberals,
Schmitt, the Nazi
yeah,
theoretician.
absolutely. I don't care.
But
And
you
so-
don't condemn Nazi persecution of the Jews.
I think that there was a little bit of persecution
We
and
may
stuff
have
like
to
that, which is
rename
bad,
this show
but-
because you're a little bit more than a far-right Republican.
Hey, what can I say?
I think you can say, I'm a fascist.
Yeah, I am.
I am an immigrant. I'm speaking from personal experience.
Get the hell out.
I don't even like... I should get the hell out.
Yes.
Why?
I don't want you here.
Talking to you.
You're gonna have to go, bro.
Nice talking to you. You're gonna have to go, bro, is what he said.
One of the participants even openly displayed belief in the idea of a white genocide occurring in the United States. For those of you that don't know, this is a common conspiracy theory that is propagated by white nationalists who think that there is a systematic attempt to cause the extinction of white people, whatever that means, through immigration, interracial marriage, integration, and somehow all the guys, gals, and non-binary pals that make up LGBTQ+ identities. It is fairly blatant how harmful and problematic this language is. Instead of simply not posting this video or changing the direction of the video to ensure that the audience knows that this is just plain racism and hate speech, Jubilee kept this production going, even as the views got more and more extreme. They made some incredibly underwhelming attempts to fact-check some of this language after the video was filmed, which definitely falls under the category of too little and too late. Editing in some little boxes that unsuccessfully try to dismiss some of these ideas is absolutely not even the bare minimum of what you should do when you have the responsibility of such a massive platform like Jubilee. All of this rhetoric was directed towards Mehdi Hasan during the filming of this video, as he was brought in to debate these so-called 20 far-right conservatives. Later, Hasan stated that he did not know ahead of time that participants in this video would have such extreme, problematic views, which is entirely the fault of Jubilee for either 1, not vetting their participants stringently enough to know that they held these views, or 2, knowing they held these views and withholding that information from Mehdi himself. Here we arrive at what I consider one of the largest structural issues with this kind of content and the values you ascribe to if you're an individual or organization that produces this kind of content. Aside from the jaw-droppingly large amount of hate speech that was proliferated during this Jubilee video, there's another issue that is equally important to combat here. Jubilee, in their own twisted way of trying to create more empathy in this world, subjected Mehdi Hasan, a brown Muslim immigrant who had no knowledge that these views would be so extreme, to some of the most vile and dangerous rhetoric one can hear from a group of white nationalists and fascists. In trying to create kindness, they then filmed this open racism and hate speech directed towards an individual of one of the most marginalized groups in the United States, sent it all the way through production, and then posted it onto their YouTube channel, which has over 4 million subscribers, so that these openly displayed views of bigotry could be viewed over 8 million times. I won't dive too much deeper into the reaction of Mehdi Hasan because it's not my role to speak for him, but also because he has some excellent content on Zeteo, his independent media company, where he discusses his feelings on the matter. Definitely go check out his stuff, there's some excellent content on there. Instead, I want to focus on the system that allowed this hate speech to be directed to him in the first place. Jubilee's seeming obsession with empathy and kindness, or whatever other soft buzzword they want to use, ultimately ends up creating a permission structure that allows for hate speech and racism to be normalized. If you ascribe to the views of fascism, white nationalism, and racism, then you fundamentally reject the idea of equality for all humans. There is no need to have dialogue or find common ground with individuals who don't believe in equal rights for all people. Debating with these ideologies to find common ground is impossible because you're starting at such a foundational ideological difference that you'll never be able to find common ground in any meaningful way. By pushing to have conversations with these forms of hate, you're inherently promoting a structure that validates this hate as a legitimate ideology. It validates it as something that can be reasoned with, something that is deserving of the respect that we have for one another. Fascism and white nationalism are not ideologies that deserve respect or a platform. Yet, the idea that is deserving of this is exactly what Jubilee communicated by publishing this video in order to create kindness. Again, it's also clearly just a money grab, but that's a separate video. To illustrate this main point, here's a really simple thought experiment. If someone walked up to you and tried to explain how some people are less than human, should you bother trying to figure out what characteristics they think make some people inferior? No, you shouldn't, because it doesn't matter what their viewpoint is, because they can't even recognize the humanity of all people. This is exactly what happens with fascism and white nationalism. It's an ideology that is fundamentally based on denying everyone equal rights through suppression and violence. The idea that we need to understand these ideologies and create content around it should only be pursued by the academics who rigorously spend decades of their lives researching this to inform the public and policymakers of how to protect society from this hate. Anything other than that is just a form of sport and rage engagement, because you're centering the perpetrator of this hate and violence and not the victims and marginalized groups who are most likely to experience the harm created by these ideologies.